Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here.
And this is Becky.
All right, well, another week, another Nikon Report. Let's start. DX camera sale apparently is in UK.
That's right. We have a new to Nikon promotion. So if you've been thinking about joining the Nikon fold, then you can now with an extra special saving. We have discounts off the Z30, Z50 and ZFC in all kit variants. And you can pick one of those up on the Grays Westminster website or your favorite retailer, which we hope is Grays or Westminster.
Yes.
On top of that, the full frame promo continues until the end of March. So the DX promo runs until the 11th of April and the full frame bodies discounts run until the 30th of March. So if you've been thinking about buying a Z camera, then pretty much everything is on offer now, including 12 months interest-free on the Nikon Z9. Whoop-de-doo.
Fantastic. Okay, and now moving on to Z8 rumors. Again, not many news came out about this. They're still preparing and gearing up for the announcement of the camera.
Lots of speculation.
But yeah, we've got some clarity on the Nikon Save the Day campaign that Nikon Philippines ran on their Twitter account. So it looks to me that there's going to be some sort of fun event with some photo walks, photo contest with prizes, something like Z6 camera or Z30 or ZFC kit. They're also going to have workshops, games, raffles, clowns and balloons. You
name it, it's going to be a whole day of Nikon fun. And the registration fee is 250 Philippine pesos. So there you go.
So it's probably quite a few pounds then. But it sounds to me that there's not going to be an announcement there, but you never know. Now, Nikon Rumours apparently have some updated specs on the camera. So let's just go through that. So
where did they get these from?
I don't know where they get from, but they're Nikon Rumours.
Yeah.
So, and we all read them and love them, of course. So
sometimes they get news before literally anyone else.
Exactly. So from the tips they've collected, so Z8 was described to them as a hybrid camera between Z7 and Z9. Between this and that, I assume, so some features of Z9 may be a larger size of Z9, so, obviously smaller than Z9, but bigger than Z7.
Okay.
So who knows? That's what it looks to me. But then he's saying it's a similar form factor for Z6 and Z7. I don't think that's the case. I think bigger body.
A little bit bigger.
Yeah, it just makes sense if you look at the lineup. Obviously, if they come out Z8, which is the same shape as the 6 and 7, it's totally fine, but I would personally prefer a slightly bigger body. Now, improved EVF, which is electronic viewfinder, according to updated specs, it's going to be a 9 megapixel EVF, which Sony introduced in their A7R5 camera.
Right.
So it's going to be higher resolution than Z9. Any higher resolution we can get in our EVFs to make it look like an optical viewfinder.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. I think Z9 for me personally was the first camera where I looked at EVF and I said, okay, that's good. That's good. Z6 and Z7 was nice, but I think Z9 was the first camera where actually made me think, okay, yeah, that's the best EVF I looked at. So if Z8 is even better, then it's just a bonus in my books, really.
Indeed. Now, they did also say improved autofocus, which presumably will mean that it's similar to the Z9 autofocus, which is vastly improved over anything else we've seen before.
And to be honest with you, it should be expected.
Yeah.
From this point on, we should have at least performance that is closer to Z9 than the previous models. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Maybe not fully matching it, but ideally, of course, matching it. But let's say if it's not there, then at least it's very close to that.
Yes, exactly. Now, they did also say on Nikon Rumours that it's going to have the same sensor as the Z9,
Boom.
Which is sad. We don't want that, but fine.
We can have an hour's talk of discussing the difference between high resolution cameras and low resolutions and all the advantages and disadvantages, like diffraction and things like this. But for people who need a high resolution camera, they would like to have a high resolution sensor. For people who don't need that, obviously we will prefer a low resolution sensor.
That's right. Now, Nikon Rumours said it will obviously not have all the Z9 features, and the announcement is expected before the summer with a rough guide price of about €4,500, although they are not sure whether this is for the camera body only or for a kit, because who knows? €4,500 would put it usually at about £4,000-ish or 3,999.
I would say for 299.
You think 4,299?
Well, if we look at the UK VAT is at 20% and European VAT is at 23-22%.
Sure.
But it's probably, we'll put it at $3,999. as it always seems to be cheaper in United States dollars. But obviously, they have an added sales tax later. So $399 is not actually what you pay.
That's right.
Of course, certain states don't pay tax, etc. So, but keep in mind that D850, when it first came out, in the United States was $3,300. So that's on day one, September 2017.
Yeah.
So if this one is priced at $3,999 or for $2,999 United States dollars, then okay, once we kind of priced in inflation, price increasing over years, I guess it makes sense. It's still cheaper than Z9.
Yeah, it's still a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but it does make a little bit more sense in that context if you're looking for a Z upgrade from the D850, which a lot of people have argued the D850 is not replaced by the Z7 or the Z7 II. So yeah, makes sense.
That's true. But keep that in mind, because we're going to talk about overall price increases over the years in our point of discussion. So stay tuned for that.
Aren't you looking forward to it?
Now, announcement April, May. Yeah, sounds like it. I mean, it's mid-March at this point already. So if there are any meetings, yes, probably meetings will happen at the end of March. I personally think that if they think the Z9 teaser campaign was successful, then we probably will see something similar with the announcement of Z8. We might start to see a teaser every week or so, which we're going to discuss to death before the actual announcements on a week 5, which we probably will look at May. So if another specs that we've seen there is 8K 60 frames per second. Okay, that sounds good. If they add a Nikon RAW to it, that would be even better. But I don't know if the lawsuit that they have with Red will affect the future releases, so they can't put those things in. I'm not sure. But then they talk about power delivery on USB-C. This is expected. This is what's going to happen to all cameras nowadays. We shouldn't really keep it as a feature per se, but
it would be problematic if it wasn't included.
Exactly. So it's one of the things where if you're paying so much for the camera, this is just a given. You don't even need to check that in the feature set, if you see what I mean.
That's correct. Exactly. We also have things like same battery as the Z7 and a potential external battery grip. We do have this
image
slide. Yeah,
it was floating around the Facebook groups and Reddits of the world.
It looks like someone photoshopped a DSLR and a Z together.
The specs that floating around, which are more closer to what I hope is going to be 61 megapixel sensor, BSI, CMOS, yada, yada, yada. So pixel shift feature, which I think we should have in Nikon cameras by default nowadays, because a lot of companies have that feature. So I don't see why not to have that. With such fast process that Z9 has, it's totally doable in my opinion. 6K video, 12-bit RAW. Okay, according to Nikon Rumours, he spoke to the guy who made it in Microsoft Paint clearly. So he said, I made it up.
These are just pie in the sky wish list kind of specifications. Exactly. Great specs, by the way.
But actually, he spoke to me first.
Oh, did he?
I gave him the specs.
And then
he drew my dream camera and a slide. I sent it out to Nick and said, just imagine this.
Yeah.
No one replied to me, obviously.
Just think what life would be like if you made the Z8 this camera right here.
The possibilities. I know people will get angry at us talking about our resolution sensor, but it's absolutely fine.
You can be angry.
Exactly. People can wish for different things.
That's right.
And obviously Nikon is not going to take anyone's side. They're just going to release the camera wherever it's been already set for about 2 years, probably pre-production. So, so whatever we speculate is a pure speculation.
Indeed. Okay.
Next up, more CP Plus interviews.
Join.
The French website for the trend.fr had an interview with Keiji Oishi, who is the head of the UX planning department within the imaging division of Nikon Corporation. So they asked him the questions about all the Nikon Z lineup. But you don't need to read everything. We kind of got the best points out of it. And one of it was actually a question about the 26mm versus 28 and why they released this lens.
Yeah. So the question put to him was, why did Nikon newly release the Z 26f2.8 with a focal length close to the 28? And he said, I wanted it to be as compact as possible. That's the first goal. After examining the focal length and optical characteristics, we chose 26mm as the shortest focal length. Moreover, this focal length should be familiar to smartphone photographers, which is an interesting point. I thought that with this lens, smartphone users would be able to enter our world more easily. You may think that 26 and 28 are very similar lenses, but in terms of both functionality and the user's point of view, these two lenses offer completely different and unique proposals.
Yeah, very interesting thought. So at the beginning, I thought it was just an exercise of how small we can make a lens and still keep the sharpness. But then this whole point about smartphone photographers is very interesting, I would say, because first of all, I didn't know that the smartphone photographer's 26mm is the focal distance to go for, and all the phones apparently have that.
Yeah.
And this whole psychological step forward from smartphone to a mirrorless camera or digital camera is so important that you need to create a lens for that.
It is actually a really interesting take on why they would produce the 26mm. Now, there were some other points that I think would be important to raise. For example, they said it seems that there are some products still missing before the Z lineup is complete, and which lens is most requested by Nikon users. What he said was that in 2022, we expanded our Z mount lineup with clear focus on telephoto lenses. Currently, we offer a total of 36, but I think we can go even further. For the Z mount, there is a need for lenses that are smaller and lighter and that incorporate video function and lenses with built-in teleconverters. We will accelerate the pace of lens development. Please look forward to future announcements. So he didn't answer the question of what lens is most requested.
Yeah. What about cameras, though? I think right now we need more cameras. It's good to have lenses. But if you look at last year, we had Z30.
Yeah.
Z9 technically was released in December, a year before. So technically we had Z30 and a bunch of colored ZFCs.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean. So I think at this point, a lot of people are waiting for just general cycle of refreshment of the older models. And obviously something like Z8 has been on people's horizons as well. So in my opinion, and that's the question I want to ask our public, is would you rather have new cameras right now and wait for the lenses? Or would you like to have more lenses coming in and use the cameras that you have already, which are not bad at all? They can still take fantastic pictures.
Yeah, it is a great question. We'd love to know your thoughts. Also, I think I know the answer to what lens is requested the most, at least by our viewers. It tends to be the 200 to 600. We do obviously get a lot of questions of when is the 85 1.2 coming out, but that's a little bit different. On the subject of lenses, just before we flip over to cameras, he did answer a question about third-party lenses. And he said that these lenses, third-party lenses, are produced under license from Nikon. Users are the first to benefit from having more options when choosing lenses. This kind of collaboration with other Nikon licensed manufacturers is very beneficial, especially for new users of the Z mount. We believe that this open stance will add value to the true sense of the word to our customers, and we will continue to do so. In addition, each manufacturer has its own unique lens characteristics, and I think it would be great if customers could choose from a wider variety of lenses. So he was saying basically what we were saying, which is the more the merrier.
Yeah, but the question is, and that Tom Hogan asked this particular question, says, why now we have all those announcements from Sigma and Voigtlander currently and Tamron with the wording under license with Nikon? We didn't have it in F-mount at all. So we can say that maybe mirrorless cameras are more sophisticated and more software driven. But if you look at that, okay, maybe we need firmware update to make sure that those lenses will work fine. Why it wasn't a problem back in the day in the F-mount system?
I think because of the length of time that the F-mount has existed in contrast to the Z-mount. Because the F-mount existed without all that electronic technology for far longer than Z-mount lenses have been around. That's my own opinion. I'm not taking that based on anything except for the fact that, you know, we've had F-mount lenses since the 60s. And Z is very new.
Yeah, but we also have Sigma and Tamron lenses and Voigtlander lenses, you know, available for F-mount systems without any firmware updates or any clashes with the firmware.
Exactly.
But now it seems to me, and I'm going to put my conspiracy theory hat on, it feels to me that because of those deals that are being arranged with those companies where they try not to kind of step on each other's territory, aka focal distances, it seems to be that Nikon is still trying to tightly control at least the big players in the game. Obviously, we have Chinese manufacturers who simply don't care enough to talk to Nikon about it. It's easier for them to reverse engineer the autofocus, aka Viltrox, or just release manual focus lenses, aka TT Artisans, 7 Artisans, Laowa, you name it.
Yeah, and those lenses don't have electronic chips to pass on information through the cameras. So there's no EXIF data being passed along. You just guess what your aperture is. And as far as reverse engineering is concerned, that's pretty simple. as was the case with F-mount lenses, I would say at the beginning at least, because F-mount didn't have any chips or anything. And as we began to see autofocus and everything, autofocus was very new to everyone.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk the last, let's say, 15 years of DSLR range. So, so let's talk about from digital cameras. Yeah. So let's start with, let's say, D1 till D6 and D850s. Yeah. So there was no licensing from Nikon thing, from Tamron, Sigmas of the world. And that's the reason why I'm thinking that Nikon is tightly controlling this. And the only way I'm going to be disproven is when Sigma or Tamron releases the lenses that will directly compete with Nikon native Z lineup.
I see. Yeah. I think that also maybe the Z technology is a little bit more proprietary than the F-mount technology was. Every manufacturer seems to have its own little secret sauce as to what it's doing. And that's probably one of the reasons why everything has to be licensed now. But yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, one thing that PhotoTrend asked on the subject of not third-party lenses, but cameras was, aside from the Z9, as we talked about, and the Z30, Nikon hasn't released any, they say many, but any cameras lately. Meanwhile, some competitors are introducing new models. Why are you silent? Can we expect new cameras this year? And they said, I can't speak of future cameras.
And that's the answer we would expect from the Nikon Executive, because none of them are going to talk about anything until it's announced.
That's right. But they did talk about firmware updates.
They did. And they found them that the firmware updates are very important. And if we actually look at the Nikon strategy in terms of firmware update release, especially with the cameras like Z9, Z6, and Z7, if you've noticed, I haven't named the other generation cameras in this lineup. But what we see is the frequency of updates that will equal or rival Fujifilm. This is the only company that can compete with frequency of firmware release. The Fujifilm was famous for this Kaizen, what they call it, firmware updates, where they say we release the camera and we're going to keep improving it via software. Nikon seems to be doing that with Z9. And my opinion is they're building this foundation for the future cameras. So Gen 3, Z6, Z7s, and Z8. I think that's what we'll start to see those. And obviously DX release as well. In the midst of it, the absence of Z6 and Z7 2 firmware updates is puzzling. Hopefully, whenever it comes up, it's going to be a huge one, like 50 gigabytes download, just like Call of Duty.
Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Nice reference. They did ask, will the technology in the Z9 also be used in other cameras such as the Z6, Z7 series? And he said, in a nutshell, I think so. The technologies developed for high-end machines are also useful for users of entry-level and mid-range machines. Even those in the Z6, Z7 class products can transfer technology adopted in the Z9. They have said it's our strategy with a portfolio that has a really solid foundation. I've never heard a Nikon executive use it this way, but they said they think that firmware updates are very important as they bring real improvements to the product and continue to spice things up. Spice up your life.
The beauty of French Google translation.
Every boy and every girl, spice up your life.
Well, he's a big fan
People of the world. Sporty spice.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said that the firmware updates continue to spice things up that are already out there. And it is really important to improve the performance of existing products and continue to satisfy customers. So that seems to be the way that Nikon are going at the moment. They're going to continue to possibly update some firmware for some select cameras and leave us guessing on what else is coming out.
So a bit non-committal, really.
Just a tad.
But I mean, you can't expect anything committal from Executive. It's just PR 101, isn't it? So you don't give definitive answers.
I mean, it would have shook the world if he'd said something like, yeah, you can expect like 3 new cameras this year.
I'm an Iron Man. That's what you have to do. That's the type of press conferences you have to do, you know? But I think I have more questions after this than the answers.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I think we really need to start to see something happening from Nikon side because the pressure's on. So we really need to start to see some action.
Yes.
The next one up, the Leitz auction that is happening on 10th of June this year has a very rare and interesting Nikon lens available for sale. It's an ultra-fast 50mm f1.1, but this one is for M39 or Leica screw mount.
Ooh. Now, Nikon was the first of the major camera manufacturers to offer an ultra-fast 50mm lens. The famous Nikon N 1.1 50mm was an impressive optical achievement, with the lens containing 9 optical elements in a relatively compact housing. A rare version of this special lens, the M39 mount, and with a black front rim, will be available in their June auction.
Okay, so I've decided to nerd out a little bit. So I've found a very good reference, which is 100th anniversary Nikon book by Uli Koch that we have for sale.
We stocked this book.
He's got some rare gems in there. And apparently there were 3 versions of this lens.
That's right.
So 2 of them were for internal and external Nikon S mount. So we've got them in the shop for sale.
We do.
So this one is internal mount.
As you can see.
5 centimeter 1.1. And then we have the external mount.
Yeah.
The same lens.
Stunning.
But now the M39 mount, like a screw mount, is so rare that even he, on his book, he's got a picture and he says just, it's rare.
It's rare.
That's all it is. Okay, so back in October last year, Leitz Auctions also had a very interesting and rare Nikon lens. It was 58mm f1 and it sold for almost 188,000 euros. So what do you reckon? One of those for M39 mount, what do you reckon? How much would it sell for?
I don't know if it's more or less rare than the 50 f1, to be completely honest, but I think it's going to go for about 200,000 euros.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my prediction. Are we taking bets here?
Okay.
What do you think?
I'll say 100,000.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be as rare as the previous one.
Yeah, I just don't actually know how rare it is to have it in that mount.
Very interesting. Let's find out. But if you're interested in getting one for your Nikon rangefinder, then we've got both versions available.
We do.
For sale. So do check it out on our website.
There you go. Okay, so an interesting point of discussion for us now. So according to a recent article in Petapixel, they said the average digital camera price has doubled over the past 3 years.
Yeah, so what they say, in 2022, the average digital camera cost was about $623,
Right.
which is more than double, actually, according to CIPA. You know the CIPA numbers that we do? So that's a Camera and Imaging Product Association. So this is based on several things. So let's discuss all those. So, but what they say is that the major camera manufacturers abandoned point-and-shoot category. Well, we all know they've taken, the phones taken over that segment. But they also started to believe in higher margins and higher prices. So they don't need to ship as much units anymore, as long as the actually shipped value is higher. So actually, as a result of it, in 2022, the shipped value increased by 40%.
That's right.
So couple of questions here, really. Let's look at the entry-level cameras skipping point-and-shoots, because point-and-shoots would start about £100 and they would go higher than that. So I think we had obviously from entry-level to about £100 to a premium cameras that would go for about 1,000. At the moment, the point-and-shoot cameras that have left and actually quite popular are those premium market point-and-shoots. So GR3 and 3X models and X100V models. And obviously Leica does Q2, which is 5,000. That's a different story. But if you look at the DSLR sales, then the G3000 series cameras from Nikon lineup would be the entry point. And the lowest they've been was about £299 for the body only. And it was about £350 with 18 to 55 non-VR kit. And I think it was about $375 for the VR version of the same lens. Now, I've looked at the current offers from Nikon mirrorless lineup, and Z30 would be their entry-level model.
Yes,
and
it would.
It is priced at £549 for the body only, but the jump for the kit with 16 to 50 lens is $775. So you are effectively paying another £225 for 16 to 50 lens.
Yeah.
Now, this is no comparable. So we're looking at $349 for G3000 kit, so G3500 kit, I think the lowest was $349, and $775 for Z30 with 16 to 50.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
It is, although arguably the Z30 is a better camera than the D3000. And there are other factors which contribute to this. For example, we had this little thing where the world kind of shut down for 2 years and that caused a bunch of delays. And then we also had shortages and we also had a chip factory fire, which actually had a massive effect on those cheaper cameras specifically. The 3000 and the 5000 cameras were the two cameras that suffered the most from that chip shortage, partly due to priorities of manufacturing. Then we also have things like inflation. That's kind of a big deal. It's the word on everybody's lips at the moment. And people are also, I would say, not spending in the same way that they were a few years ago.
Okay, well, let me just give you a heads up on inflation. So according to Google search, $300 in 2020 would be worth about $346.78 in 2023.
Wow.
So that's with the current inflation. According to different sources, we look in the average inflation of 12.49%. But if you're looking at actually $300 to $350, that's more than that.
Yeah,
so,
it's about 16%.
Exactly. So that's what it is. So obviously, when we look at those prices, it's not the double as SIPA numbers led us to believe, but obviously abandoning the entry-level models and going for higher performing models with the higher margins, it seems like makes more sense. And as you were right, D3000, G5000 were the worst affected cameras because of the semiconductor shortages, because it doesn't make sense to use semiconductors to produce cheaper cameras if you can put them in more expensive cameras.
Exactly. Now, what we would say is if you are looking at buying a camera, an entry-level camera now, if you really can't stretch to the slightly better technology of a mirrorless camera, and also investing in a mirrorless camera now does sort of future-proof you to a certain degree, because even if you found one of those DSLRs cheaper around, you're not necessarily going to be proofed against parts shortages and repairs, etc. in the future. But if you cannot go that way, then you can look at secondhand cameras in order to save a few pennies or pounds.
Well, the problem is it feels like that a lot of photographers are now being priced out from all the current releases. I mean, let's talk about the H5mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so H5 1.4G, when it first came out, was about $1,500. So the H5 1.2, well, the specs is obviously different, but it's £3,000.
Huge difference.
So it's double.
Yeah.
And if you're working photographer and you know, it's your bread and butter, you will spend this money. The problem is for people who are starting out, who want to upgrade, that's a lot of spare change.
Yeah.
And in terms of, you start to look at that, then you start to look at the Z9 or Z8, which were premium models, of course, but it's a lot of money for a lot of people. Now, Z30 at 775 with the lens, for me, is not a great value.
But it is an interesting point. If you're looking at going from a smartphone to a camera now, here's the thing. Most of our very top-end smartphones cost the same amount the mirrorless camera.
That's true. And for some reason, everyone has the latest smartphone.
Yeah, we all have the latest, you know, well, not we all, because I don't upgrade. I upgrade like once every 4 years.
That takes about 3 years.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years to upgrade. But still, when you buy that new smartphone, it's over £1,000. And yet we think that's a lot for a camera. Obviously, cameras do different things to phones. But if we're just comparing phone cameras with... It's way more than anyone would ever spend on a point-and-shoot camera. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we can have a discussion on why the phones are so expensive, and they did become more expensive as well.
For sure.
Compared to what they used to be.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. What the interesting point from that interview that we mentioned before, Keiji Oishi said that actually a lot of younger people now tend to go from smartphone photography to mirrorless photography, and they feel like that they're not going to spend £300. They're actually happy to pay more to get the jump in terms of image quality.
Those young people.
So actually something like Z30, which costs less than, let's say, latest iPhone, this actually makes more sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know, the way I'm looking at everything is becoming so expensive, and unless you making a living or you're really well off, it's becoming a lot more expensive to buy new equipment now. So tell us what you think. Is a second-hand is the right way to go? Are the prices too high in this day and age, especially throughout the recession time that we have right now? Or you think that the current lineup is very competitive and it's fairly priced from all manufacturers? We're not talking Nikon here. We're talking about the trends, and we want to hear what you think about it.
Moving on to our review section, and actually some Z30 news here. So
the cheapest mirrorless camera from Nikon lineup.
That's right. So Nikon Z30 reviewed by Petapixel. They subtitle it, a travel camera that's more than just for vloggers. Ooh. And yes, it's more than just for vloggers. Did you know that? Ooh. So they say, and I'm going to summarize here, a solid choice for beginners, travelers, and vloggers. While the Z30 actually does make an amazing camera for travel and vacations, the system is clearly aimed at influencers, educators, and content creators, like us, who are looking for something better than just their smartphone for capturing video, but who also don't want to invest heavily into a high-end setup. Since the little camera is so easy to use as a one-man operation, it really is a great choice for vloggers, TikTok, YouTubers who need to document their daily adventures and normal lives while keeping the footprint small enough to fit in a very small bag.
Becky, are you documenting your daily adventures?
I barely document my weekly or monthly adventures, let alone my daily adventures, but we kind of document Nikon's daily adventures, sort of. The system is very beginner friendly, but still offers enough professional options that it and likely will remain in a content creator's arsenal even after they upgrade to one of Nikon's larger camera bodies. Should you buy it? Yes. It's small, simple to operate, and has some impressive autofocus in both still and video formats, and is seriously easy to travel with.
Okay, we will have a wish list of or recommendation to Nikon what to include with Z30, as well as ZFC, I think, is to put a manual, charger, and a beanie in a box.
For content creators.
The influencers, the creators, the latte art picture takers.
That's right. All right.
Next up, Christopher Frost reviewed the newly released 7200 Z lens. It just came out yesterday, apparently, and he reviewed it. He liked it very much. He also reviewed Tamron 7300 lens that actually came out very recently. And if you want to hear his thoughts, then definitely check his Nikon-related videos.
That's right. Now, Mikey 10mm f2 lens for the Z mount was reviewed by Nikon Rumours. Okay, so the strong points are the price, that the lens is sharp and fast, the depth of field is really nice.
Really nice.
You can get close up from a foot away and have good bokeh, etc. It's pretty.
It's pretty.
It's pretty to look at cosmetically in terms of build quality,
Well,
not just the images.
That's, for me, is the kind of major decision. If it doesn't look pretty, I don't buy it.
I know. And it's smooth. So those are the pros. And then the cons are that the first time they mounted it, it was a little stiff, didn't take excessive force. Probably isn't really a big con because they loosen up after a couple of on-off cycles. And from reading this, you might get the impression that I really like the lens, and you're right. This one is going in my daily camera bag. So not really a con at all. But anyway, very good. So a really overall likable lens.
Yeah.
Huzzah.
Huzzah. All right. And then in We Can Read and Watch section, we have a live camera chart where we talked about film photography and we showed your images.
We did.
On a big screen. I am actually was quite grateful for the views we have because the pictures were amazing.
They were. Now, we also have an article by Christopher Malcolm at F-Stoppers called How I Ended Up Using 11 Nikon Z9 Cameras to Film a TV Pilot. Quite an interesting topic indeed.
Yeah, he says Z9 has terrific phase detection. I guess if you're shooting a music video, that's quite helpful to keep everything in focus. He also liked the reliability of Nikon Z9. And if you have 11 of them, then you must be rich.
Exactly, loaded. And last up, we have a wonderful video by our friend Matt Irwin, who has a video called Nikon 51.2S versus 55 1.2.
Bookylicious winner is.
Yeah, he says, can you tell the difference? So go and have a look at it and see if you can tell which lens is which.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us for this train wreck this week.
Thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please give us a like and a subscribe, a follow, a rating, perhaps a review if you're listening on a podcast platform.
Yeah, we're available everywhere like Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Amazon Music. But also please do share us on social platforms like Facebook and Reddit of the world.
Yes, and if you'd like to find us on the interwebs, you can find us on Instagram. I'm at Rebecca_Danese. The shop is at Nikon at Grays.
And I'm at Konstantin Kochkin. We will see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Howdy.
Whoop whoop. Who's your favorite spice? Jerry, Sportsy?
It was Melcy for
Melcy.
sure. So that's Sporty Spice for anyone that doesn't remember. I mean, I not that anyone will ever find these pictures, but I was in a I was in a Spice Girls tribute act at school with my friends, and
Did you have like
I was
the
Sporty Spice.
Union Jack outfit and all that?
No, that's the wrong Spice Girl. That was Ginger Spice.
Oh, that's always Ginger Spice. That just shows my knowledge
It was
about
Jerry
Spice
Halliwell.
Girls. Okay.
Anyway, I was Sporty Spice. Not that I'm particularly sporty, but anyway, I was very good at her parts.
Join us next week for Take That discussion and the rest of the 90s girls and boys bands.
That's right, totally. Every boy and every girl, spice up your life. People of the world, spice up your life.
Copyright strike.
How many years ago was the Spice Girl? Long.
Have you seen a Spice World movie?
Yes, of course. I owned the VHS version in the special limited edition tin. I went and saw it in the cinema.
Yeah.
as well. I was all for the British pop bands.
Yeah.
Spice Girls, take that. 911, A1, 5.
Westlife?
Westlife were Irish, but yeah, sure. They were a little bit later. Boyzone, a bit earlier. It was all about British pop bands, not American pop bands. NSYNC came way later, except Backstreet Boys. They're an exception. Backstreet Boys, like, just complete legends.
The minutes of my life I will never get back.